I believe Foreigner said it best. You're as cold as ice. The Heat in Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals, delivering a nightmare shooting performance that broke records for all the wrong reasons. So they missed a franchise record, 38 three-pointers, and scored on just 32% from the floor. It's worst in any game in more than a decade. Hey, but shout out to Gabe Vincent, who made one from downtown last night. The Celtics burning Miami with a second-half blitz that has them just one win away from their first trip to the NBA Finals since 2010. This really is the weirdest series ever. What's up, everyone? Good morning to you. Good thirsty Thursday morning to you. Welcome to The Sweat, presented by DraftKings. I'm Emerson Latzia. Before we dive into the NHL, MLB, and some F1 here, let's bring in our NBA panel consisting of DraftKings contributor Matt Meiselman and Jeff Pratt. Jeff, I'll start with you. Last night, was it more about like the Heat being hobbled here or the Celtics just being the more complete team?
Can I say both?
Yeah, you can.
Am I allowed to say both, Emerson? Because
allowed.
I think that's absolutely the case. Look, if the Celtics don't close this out in Game 6 at home, it's going to be because of a massive collapse on their part. This is just a better team than Miami, flat out, in every aspect right now, offensively, defensively, from a health perspective. As you said, Emerson, Jimmy Butler is clearly not right. You saw it last night. He had virtually no lift on his shot, no spring in his first step. Kyle Lowry is so hurt that he's a negative on the court right now. The only guy giving them consistent minutes is the one who you shouted out in the intro, Gabe Vincent. The Celtics absolutely should close out this series in 6. They're the better team. They have the health edge right now. Everything is working in their favor. I'd say their win last night, definitely due to their swarming defense, but Miami's health problems definitely helping them out as well.
Yeah, Matty, Brown and Tatum combining for 37 points in the second half. The Heat as a team had 38. What chance are you giving Miami to actually win Game 6 tomorrow night in Boston?
Well, I'm just happy we're in this position. That's the most important thing to me right now. Just the Celtics are minus 1,200 or so to win the Eastern Conference. They were 30-1 to win the Eastern Conference when we started talking about them 4 or 5 months ago. So this is good. It's objectively good that it's this situation. I don't think the series is 100% over.
Ooh.
The Heat are, I think it's like 93% over. It's pretty close to over. But the Heat have good players. Of course, I think the Celtics are the better team. But we've seen these injuries where, like, some games guys look terrible and then other games they look great. Kyle Lowry has actually had a good game or two in this series. Jimmy Butler at times this year has looked bad and then come back. So I think they're going to be pretty demoralized, but I don't expect a blowout in Game 6. I do think the Celtics will win it. I think they'll close it out. I wouldn't lay the 9 points that they're now. It's crazy this is the line to me. But I wouldn't lay the 9 points, but I do think the Celtics should win. And I do feel pretty good about the Celtics beating the Warriors or the Mavericks, who are not out of it yet, in the finals. I'm sure we'll get to that too.
Yeah, it's a big number there. 9-point favorite at home. And then the total, the lowest all series long already for tomorrow night at 201 here. There is another Game 5 going down tonight out west, and while it's tough to bank on the Mavs, like pulling out another win here, it's clear that they're not going to go down without a fight against Golden State, guys. Jeff, who is your DFS showdown captain here?
How do you not captain Luka Doncic tonight? I know he's almost 19K, but the man scored 66-plus DK fantasy points in 3 straight games. And you know he's going to show up every single night. At this point, he's basically the Mavs' entire offense. He's seen a usage rate of 40% or higher in back-to-back contests. He's the only Dallas Maverick you can count on to show up and perform. Now, that feels like cheating, kind of picking Luka. He's the obvious choice. If you want to roll with another option, I look at avoiding all the big names and go with Kevon Looney at 10.5K. He didn't play that much in the second half of last game because they were getting blown out, but he's a huge part of Golden State's game plan versus Dallas. He's had 25-plus DK fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games. This is a strong play if you don't want to pay all the way up for Luka, which I still think is the best option tonight.
Okay, Matty, it does feel like Curry and Doncic need to be in every lineup out there. These are all guaranteed points, but what about in the captain spot?
Yeah, I think I have to just go with Luka also. And Jeff mentioned he's almost 19K. He was
True.
21.6K last game. This is actually like a value compared to where he was for game four. I'm not really sure how the pricing wound up this way, but yeah, like unless you're in a contest that has tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people where you really, really need to be contrarian, I think unless you're in one of those, you just play Luka at captain because I do think there are enough ways on this slate to differentiate. These teams are using a lot of different role players in their rotations right now. There's been a lot of unpredictable games and outcomes in this series. So I think you can start with Luka at captain and then just get different elsewhere in your lineup. I don't feel as strongly about including Steph Curry. I think Luka is the clear choice over Steph. And the only reason you wouldn't captain Luka is if you're playing for a blowout, which I don't think is a reasonable way to play this game.
All right, so if you are going to spend nearly $19,000 here, Maddie, on your captain, on Luka, you got to hook me up with some value. You got to hook me up with how you're going to save some cash there. Guys, you could still give you some points, though.
Well, there are some cheap guys I like, but the first way I'm saving cash is to not play Steph Curry. So my favorite Warriors player for this game is Draymond Green. And it's been a while now since he's had a really good game in the playoffs in terms of fantasy points. And for like one reason or another, he keeps losing minutes. We were actually on track to having the first really good Draymond fantasy game of this series in game four, but then the Warriors didn't have to play their starters for the entire fourth quarter until the last couple minutes. And Draymond wasn't one of the guys who came back in the game anyway. It was only, I think, Steph, Clay, and Wiggins came back in. So Draymond only played 25 minutes and he scored 30 fantasy points. I think that because the big game isn't there yet, the ownership stays a little low. And this is too cheap of a price for Draymond. Like, sure, I get that Kevon Looney has played well, but he's $600 more than Draymond Green only. Like, that's a little nuts to me. But just one other thing to add here. We don't know yet if Otto Porter Jr. is going to play. So that could change some things if we find out he's in the lineup.
Okay, Jeff, I know that you technically went with Looney, right? As a captain, you said you would definitely pay out for Luka here. Just give me some guys whose salaries like aren't going to absolutely crush you, but you think could bring some value to the table.
Yeah, I think you have to look at potentially rolling the dice with Maxi Kleba or Jonathan Kuminga, which is not very enticing when you say that at first. But if Kleba can reproduce what he did in game four when he finished with 33 DK fantasy points, you're getting great bang for your buck at 4,400. The problem is with Kleba, as we know and as we've seen throughout this series, he could be an absolute no-show. And then on the other side, you have to like Kuminga because he's so cheap. He scored 23 plus DK fantasy points in two of his last three games. The problem with him is it seems like he only gets significant run when it's a blowout on either side, as Matt alluded to earlier. With what we've seen in this series, I'm not ruling out a blowout tonight, especially for Golden State. They're at home with a chance to close it out and get some rest going into the NBA Finals. I also think that he has earned some minutes moving forward in the regular rotation with how he's playing, especially if Otto Porter is out tonight. But I'm not Steve Kerr. I don't make those decisions. Regardless, all of that said, at 2,800, feels like it's worth taking a shot on Kuminga tonight.
All right, Jeff, how about your fading approach here? Is there an obvious play, an obvious guy that you want to fade in DFS, or maybe a contrarian approach here?
There are a couple guys I'm looking at. I know that Matt is looking to fade Steph Curry, just not throw him in his lineups. I'm not sure it's worth paying up for Jalen Brunson or Klay Thompson tonight. These are the third and fourth highest priced players on the slate, but the production just hasn't been there consistently for either of them. Brunson's 9K. He hasn't scored over 32 DK fantasy points in back-to-back games. Clay's 8,800, but he hasn't scored over 33 fantasy points in this series. I think you're better off paying up for Luka and then grabbing some of these cheaper options like a Kleba or a Kuminga to build around.
Matty, is that true? You're looking to fade like Steph Curry here, a guy who scored at least 40 DK fantasy points in his last 5 games?
Yeah, the reasoning is really just I don't want to play these cheaper guys. So the player I'm least interested to play tonight that people will gravitate towards a little is Moses Moody, who I think was the popular value play going into last game, and no one really thought Jonathan Kuminga would play a big role. He ended up getting a surprising number of minutes, honestly, but Moody was the guy who lost out because of that. And then he ended up picking up basically the whole fourth quarter because it was garbage time for the Warriors. The Mavericks still had their starters in. It was a very unusual game. But I don't think Moody would have even reached 10 minutes had that game not been a blowout. So coming into this game, like if Otto Porter Jr. plays, I'm not sure Moody even sees the court. And then if Porter's out, which I do think is the more likely outcome, I don't think he's going to play tonight. Moody still may only play 7 or 8 minutes. And because of his price at 2K, I think a lot of people will go there so that they can squeeze in Luka and Steph. So it's really like the synergy for the lineup of if you play Steph, you then have to play someone like Moody. And I just don't like that as a combination.
Well, let's go over to the DK Sportsbook here, guys. What's a player prop, Maddie, that you like for Game 5 between the Mavs and the Warriors here?
So it's a little hard for me right now not knowing what Otto Porter's status is. So I'm just going to evade this question a little and just go to the spread, because I think the Mavericks are live to win this game. Like, I think they're not totally live to win the series, but I imagine a lot of the analysis today is going to be like bet some overs on guys like Kuminga or Moody or, the guys who could pick up extra garbage time minutes. I think that's nuts. The spread right now is 7. Like, I think it should be 5 or less. And I think this game actually winds up being close. I know the narrative of the blowouts and everything. So stuff that has to do with the game staying close, like I'll basically, like in terms of props, just trend towards that. I do like Jeff's call of Looney having a bounce back game because he lost his minutes entirely due to the blowout. I don't expect there to be a blowout for this one. I think Looney does get his minutes back. It didn't really look good with him off the court. So overall, like my game script for the game, people can do what they want with this, is I think Dallas keeps it close, and I think the starters play more minutes than they did last game.
Okay, Jeff, talk to me here.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to fading Klay Thompson here, and I'm going to take the under on his 18.5 points, which is what it was at last time I checked. And last time I checked, you could actually get it at plus money on DraftKings Sportsbook, which I think is kind of crazy. Klay's been pretty bad throughout this series, just point blank. He's gone under this point total in 3 of his last 4 games, and a large part of that is due to really poor shooting numbers. He's 7 of 24 from behind the arc in this series, and unless he really breaks out of that shooting slump, it's going to be hard for him to hit the over on his points. It's also worth noting that this is in fact not Game 6, so we are safe to bet against Klay Thompson tonight. If this is the next game and this series advances to Game 6, I think we've seen enough to know you have to take all the overs on him. But it's Game 5, so take the under on Klay's props.
Yeah, I'm also seeing 34.5 here for Luka, Jeff, and he's averaging, nearly 37 points per game through the 5 elimination playoff games he's played in his career so far, which highest average in that situation in NBA history, too.
Yeah, absolutely. The other prop I had highlighted was actually his points and rebound prop, which we've gone to a couple of times when I've appeared on the show throughout this series. We know he's going to show up. He's going to put on a clinic. He probably would have been in the 50s in combined points and boards last game if it wasn't a blowout. He's been hitting that number consistently. So whether it's points or rebounds, he's going to show up. I definitely take the over.
Matt, I know you just mentioned the spread, but how about this trend right here? The game total has gone under in odd number games so far in this series and over in even number games. So the total's at 215.5 right now. It was 215.5 in games 2 and 4 when it went over. So which way are you leaning and why is it over?
Well, I'm leaning over because it's more fun. No, I took a minute to look at this question before we came on because this is the kind of thing that I just genuinely don't like at all, like these sorts of trends. But I tried to convince myself that there was a serious way for me to answer it. And maybe Jeff has one. My brain just won't let me. It won't let me play into this trend game. So I think that looking to Otto Porter is relevant in terms of the total. If he plays, you get him playing more of a small ball lineup without Kevon Looney, and that helps the over. That's really all I've got, though. Like, it doesn't matter to me that the games have alternated overs and unders. I know, like, it's good for content that that this happens, but I can't, like, it breaks my brain a little bit trying to figure this out. So I've got nothing in terms of just wait for the Otto Porter injury news.
Okay.
Because I think that could affect the total a little bit. But I'm not very excited to bet the total for this game in either direction.
So their last meeting inside the Chase Center here, Jeff, they pumped out 243 combined points. That topped the closing total of 215.5 by 27.5 points in game 2.
Yeah, I don't have a serious answer for this question either. I went with the over for the last game, and I'm going with the over again today for a similar reason. In elimination games like this, we tend to see a ton of pace. These guys get antsy. They want to push the ball up and down the floor. There are a lot of turnovers, which tend to lead to fast break points, which is great for the over. The Warriors played horribly in game 4, and they still hit 109 points. I have a hard time believing we're going to get a defensive battle tonight. And by no means am I saying that these two teams aren't capable of making it a defensive battle. It just feels like this is going to be another high-scoring game.
Yeah, and Tuesday's contest saw an uptick in pace rating, by the way, at 97.5 compared to 96.67 in the 3 games prior. I need you quick on this last one, guys. What's your gut telling you here? Will Dallas force a Game 6, Jeff?
No, they're done.
Okay.
Warriors are going to the finals.
All right, Matt, what do you think?
Gut says the game is close. I think they have a shot. I don't know who wins, but I do think this will be a close game.
Okay, so you're that's really a non-answer there.
I'll pick the Mavs. I'll pick the Mavs.
Oh, you're going to take the Mavs. Okay, great.
I
Love
will
it.
take the Mavs.
Way to live on the edge a little bit. I would love to see a Warriors-Celtics finals. That would be an absolutely sexy matchup there.